Okay, so we're back on the channel.
Oh yes, yes. It's been a few weeks,
Yeah,
but yeah, done a few things in between,
yeah,
and we're back from all our travels to give more wisdom.
yeah. So today there was a topic that you wanted to discuss on your channel.
Yes,
So what
yes.
is the topic?
Well, really, I just really wanted us to look at some of the reasons why people aren't actually going forward with getting their soulmates,
Okay.
and basically what are the barriers, what are the things that are stopping them from getting that soulmate,
Yeah,
because it doesn't have to take many years to actually begin to form relationships with the right kind of people that they want, and the kind of right alignment, let me put it like
yeah,
that fits with their own sets of values and beliefs that will help them. But so I just want to talk a little bit about what are the barriers, some sort of common mistakes that people make because they don't always see that these might be blind spots to why, because I had a conversation with somebody and they said, I've got everything else. I just need the man. Just give me the man. And I'm like, I wish I could.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think so I think emotional intelligence is like a skill that, let's say, not a lot of people have, and it's not an easy skill to have. I was discussing with you like earlier today that I'm not saying I have a lot of emotional intelligence because I don't think I do, but I have more than I did before because I do consume a lot of like relationship content on
Yeah.
YouTube and stuff. And before I consumed it, there were things I didn't really think about, I didn't really consider. And when I started watching that kind of content, I started to think, am I like that? Do I think like that? Do I say these things? And it really made me think and reflect on like how I behave in like a relationship setting and how like I come across.
Yeah. I
And
think.
considering that, I don't think a lot of people consider that. And I think the reason why I got to that point was because I'm the type of person that even if someone says something I don't necessarily like, I'm still willing to, still listen and see
Being open and
what
tolerant
they have
of.
to say.
Yeah.
And that you can learn a lot from doing that. I feel like a lot of people don't get information they need because on path to that, someone might say something they don't necessarily like or
And
something
that's
that
it.
doesn't
They've.
agree
Yeah.
with what they think, and then they just shut it off. And yeah,
And you've hit the nail on the head, because one of the things that I find that people, recently I've started actually going on TikTok, so watch out for me on TikTok. But what I find is that people aren't actually friendly towards people that they're not attracted to. And I think that's a big mistake. That's one of the things that I'm encouraging people to just be friendly. Even if you don't find that lady or that gentleman necessarily, like, there's no chemistry, but they're approaching you, or your the situation has brought you guys together in some way, just be nice.
yeah,
Be willing to open conversation. Be open with your conversation with them. If they ask for your number, I mean, it's very hard for in the society that we live in to actually go and approach somebody that you don't know and start a conversation. And this is why you have some of these kind of speed dating type events that people put on, because then you're all there for that purpose. But that can't be the only way to meet people, although that's one of the events I would suggest people
yeah,
should go to. If you're being very deliberate about meeting people, you have to have a plan of action. Online isn't the only way. There are events that are pulled up. There's different things that you can do. But this is just one rule of just attracting different kinds of people, even when they're not attractive. You don't necessarily find them physically attractive. Be nice. Dare yourself to talk to someone that you don't find physically attractive, and try and strike a conversation. Have you ever tried doing something like that before? The one with
yeah.
the
I
goofy
mean,
teeth, or the one that.
so my philosophy in life just generally has always been treat everyone with respect. So it doesn't matter if I find someone attractive or not, or if someone tries to, which has happened, like girls have like approached me, I don't find them attractive, but I'm not going to be rude. I think everyone like deserves respect. Like they've gone out of their way to tell me they're attracted to me, so why'd I then be mean? Because they've already put themselves in like a vulnerable position.
Yeah, yeah.
And vice versa. So like when guys go to women, I do know that some women take joy in like harshly rejecting people. It makes them feel better about themselves in a way, or doing stuff like that. Personally, I just wouldn't. I just treat everyone nicely. I don't really, man, woman, it doesn't matter. I just think everyone should be
Be treated with
respectful. Yeah.
respect. I mean, you've said something like, for some women, they would actually take pleasure in really cutting this man down to size, and I think
Some
for
men
me,
do. The
and
reason why I
vice
mention
versa.
women is
Yeah,
because men are more likely to approach women. So
yeah,
it's more likely to
yeah.
happen a woman rejecting a man.
Man
Yeah.
than the other way around. Either way, the harsh reject is usually a residual of something that's happened in the past. Maybe somebody's been jilted in a way that they didn't find favorable. And the next man or the next woman becomes, I'm gonna get you. So one of the reasons why people don't move forward with finding their soulmate is that they still have unresolved issues. And again, this is something that they do unconsciously. You talked about emotional intelligence when we started, and this, to me, is something we all have to work on. It's not something you learn in school.
Oh yeah,
It's
hundred
not
percent.
taught in universities. It's not relationship generally.
It's
It's
just like
not. There's no
financial
syllabus.
literacy. You
Exactly.
have to go out of your way to learn
Exactly.
it.
It's
Yeah.
not like there's a syllabus in it. A lot of us have experienced things. Obviously, I have lived the experience of having a relationship second time around, and it was very difficult. But I had to put myself out to be able to achieve that, because that's just not what that was not my comfort
That's
zone.
interesting, actually. What I want to know, obviously, because obviously you're in your second marriage. What I want to know is because I feel like a lot of people, let's say they have an unsuccessful relationship, they then aren't really willing to be open to anything from that point onwards, because it's like, oh, let's say this man did this, so all men are like this way. How are you able to, I don't know, maybe not get past it, but how are you able to sort of still be open?
Okay, that's a very good question, and that's one of the things that I really feel is a blockage for a lot of people from
Right.
finding their soulmate. You feel really hurt, you feel rejected.
Yeah.
I certainly was in a place where I had lost some confidence actually in my ability to actually attract anyone. So that stage, you do need some friends
So
around
you,
you,
you felt like you couldn't attract anyone because you've been in a marriage for so long.
and it failed.
Right, right,
So
right,
you
right,
feel like I can't even get that right.
right.
And as you've said, because it's not something that's taught, I was in a situation, and a lot of people in that situation where, on the education side, we're really well versed from young. We're taught you have to do well in school,
Nigerians.
especially if you're coming from an West African background like we are. You can't, mess from a young age.
Yeah.
But on the relationship front, the kind of message is that you should just be in a successful marriage. That's the end goal. But how you get there, that's your problem.
I think that is an issue with I don't want to say our culture has an issue, but that is one glaring hole where in a lot of Nigerians, the main focus for us is just like academics. So a lot of us do so well academically. Like if you look at stats in like somewhere like America, the most successful minorities by country, Nigerians are like really high up because Nigerians go to like Harvard and MIT and stuff. But it's because we value like education and career so much. But I think sometimes we have such tunnel vision
Yeah.
in our education and our careers that we don't have any emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And people just expect us, like, when you turn a certain age, they're like, oh, why aren't you married? And now you have to marry someone with zero emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's why there tends to be a lot of issues.
Well, I think also our cultural expectations are such that we haven't actually broken it down, the bits in between. How do you get from, okay, I've got my education now, I've got, I'm in a good job. How do I move from that into a successful marriage or
Right.
a successful relationship?
Right.
So you kind of begin to now look for people that match you materially rather than people that match you emotionally,
Right.
psychologically and all those things, because you know.
Which is way more important because financial situations change so quickly. Like someone can have a good job, they can lose their job, this can happen, can lose their money, they can make a bad business decision, or they can become even richer. Like the financial situation and circumstance can change so rapidly
Yeah.
over the course of a long-term relationship, which is why if money is one of the holding foundations of a relationship, that relationship is going to break
Well, I
very
mean,
easily and very quickly.
you know, kind of like what we were saying
Yeah.
is that that's a barrier, because if you have all the material comforts that you need, then you kind of feel like, okay, the next thing now is marriage. And marriage tends to be the last thing, by the way,
Yeah.
after you've done all those things. And that's okay. Not necessarily a bad thing. But I think the emotional intelligence, if we were really now looking back in retrospect, I think it's all equally important.
Yeah.
As early as possible, start thinking about, okay, what kind of relationship do I want for the future? If you decide that, oh, that's not my thing, then that's different. But if you want a soulmate, if you want a husband or a wife, then that's something you need to be planning much earlier. And have a group of people around you that have, you know, that kind of aspiration, so that they can help you to start
Right.
looking and thinking and maybe sounding off on them. So in terms of myself, when I got, you know, I had a broken relationship, it was a major feeling of failure, because I had like a typical Nigerian upbringing, in the sense that career tick,
Yeah.
you know, everything was on point, and I didn't expect my marriage to fail.
Yeah.
You know, that was just not on the cards. And so when it failed, it was like, this is shame,
Right.
major shame. So the first thing I had to do was just, where do I begin? I was emotionally in a very low place. I was emotionally broken, actually. And I didn't really want to face people. So at that point in time, I wasn't ready for a relationship. So what did I do in between that now got me out of being able to date again? Was to really self-reflect.
Okay.
So why am I feeling so bad about this? It wasn't just me that was in the relationship. It takes two. So no matter what you desire, if one other person or both of you are not willing to make it work, you can't really
Yeah, of
make it
course,
work.
of course.
So self-reflection. And I had to really deal with the bits that maybe I could have done differently. And I had to employ the help of others, including a counselor if
Yeah.
necessary. And that's, again, something that people think, oh, you know, who needs a counselor? You can go and talk to your pastor, talk to your imam or whoever. Why do you need?
Yeah.
But you need, sometimes people who are out of objective. They're not part of your usual network to talk to. But you also need people who are friends, who are close to you, and who are willing to accept you for who you are. So not the one that's financially sound, career-wise, you know, MIT, high up there. People who are just going to be there for you. So in doing that, you have to examine that, where I am now, is it going to help me to just take time out and look at what I could have, you know, done differently? What I need now to make me feel able to just be again. Never mind just have another relationship, because that's not the space one is at. Once you're able to do that self-reflection and say, right now, what I need is calm, accept myself for where I am now and not feel like I'm a failure, then you can begin to start to pick up the pieces. Have some counseling if you need the counseling,
Right.
from people who are not necessarily close to you, as well as a few friends. And some friends, trust me, they won't want to be with you because you are now no longer successful. Because you've got a failed, in quote,
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Some people think it's contagious as well,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah.
If I move with her or him, that's what's going to happen to me.
I think it comes from that mindset of birds of the same feather flock together.
Yeah.
Which is true in some aspects of life, but in other aspects is like you don't really have a lot of control over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really important that you shared this, because I think one of the biggest issues in like dating, and especially like people finding their soulmate or finding someone that they're going to marry, is, let's say they've had a bad experience from a past relationship, that baggage, they never get over it, and it affects how they
Relate.
relate in future relationships, and that affects people that say were actually a good match and a good fit, and they probably would have gotten married and it would have lasted because of the baggage. They couldn't get over the baggage, so they sort of messed it up in a way. So it's quite important you saying how you're able to get past it.
Yeah, I mean, I took some time out. I actually spent like 6 months in South Africa, and I chose South Africa because I didn't have any family there. People say, why don't you go to somewhere where you have family? Because it was very important to me to have that space where I didn't have like people who had expectations of me, you know, because my family just wouldn't see me in that way. They've not ever known me to be so down because I was. But I did have a friend in South Africa who was able to be a neutral just space. I was able to stay in their house, and I remember I used to travel back and forth from UK because I had a young son who he was with his dad during that time, because I actually was homeless as well. So it can be very bad, you know, situation, you know, because from my kind of background, being homeless was just out of the question. You're an educated woman. Why would you ever be homeless? But the main thing is that I'd lost my home. That's it. And I was emotionally broken. So how do I get over that? And a lot of men and women are in that position. They'll say, I'll never trust another man or a woman again. I've been once bitten, twice shy. But you're actually cutting yourself off of a learning opportunity.
You're doing yourself a disservice.
Exactly, because this situation I've never been in before, but it's an opportunity to get over it. And you know that saying, what doesn't kill you, I say, makes you wiser.
And
Not
I
stronger,
think a lot of
makes you
people
wiser.
don't realize that it's very rare that you can just go through life and not face any adversity. So some people think, okay, I faced the first adversity, that's it, I'm not going to do something. And that's not how you're supposed to react. When you see adversity, you're supposed to overcome it. And obviously, it's not easy.
No.
If you've been through a bad relationship, you might have to go to therapy. Like you said, there might be a lot of things you might have to do before you can get over it. But it's still trying to overcome it rather than just like throwing it to the side, because it's only you it will affect long term. Like, humans aren't made to be alone. There's no one that can tell me that they like their own space long term till the day they die. I know a lot of people like to pretend and claim that that they don't need any family, they don't need anyone. Humans are made to be together with other people. You're not supposed to be like secluded and isolated from the world. That's why, you know, in prison, one of the worst things they can do is put you in isolation. People go mad. People
That's
lose
why
their
it's
minds.
a punishment, isn't it?
Exactly. People lose their minds. People lose their heads.
Yeah.
It's because we're supposed to be around people.
Yeah. And I think also that this discussion is for people who maybe do want to have a relationship, but there's barriers there and they recognize that. It's not for people who have gotten themselves into, I don't need nobody, I don't want nobody, I'm good by myself. We know people like that, but we also know deep down that's a barrier.
Yeah,
that's
deep
a
down
barrier.
it is a barrier.
It is a barrier, and that's fine to be in that space for a while. But really, you need to face the situation. What is it that's hurt you? And what do you need? I actually remember asking my ex for forgiveness. Now, that might seem like a strange thing, but that made me feel like I could move on. Because it can't all be his fault while we're where we are. And that's what people don't take responsibility for. And
Seeing what they did that was wrong.
that could have contributed.
Yep.
Not even necessarily wrong. That could have contributed. And I can already hear some people say, but I was in a domestic abuse situation. My husband or my wife was the one beating me and whatever. Why should I have to go and ask for their forgiveness? And what I would say to somebody in that situation is that you are not taking blame for the whole relationship falling apart. You are asking for forgiveness to release yourself. You actually saying that, forgive me if there is anything I did in this relationship that has contributed to it not working. Not like for you to beat me. You know, like there's some people who say,
I mean, whatever you've done, there's no excuse for someone to put their hands on anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can say that, forgive me for anything I've done in this relationship that has brought us to where we are now no longer able to be a married couple anymore. That one, I think we can all work towards that. And that releases you as a person, not really even anything. That person may or may not accept your apology, by the way. Or
Of course not. Yeah.
you know, that's neither here nor there. But that's just one of the things you can do. The other thing, as I said, is that you can employ the support of people who are close to you. You will lose some friends, definitely, but you can employ the help of some people who have your back in every situation. There will always be one person that will be like that, and be ready to trust their judgment, because part of being emotionally intelligent is recognizing that you have blind spots. And a lot of people don't want that.
Don't want to recognize
They
that,
don't
yeah.
want to recognize that because they have material things. And you know, like money is like a defense. I can afford to buy myself whatever. But, you know, it's like looking at something, a glass. Some people, you put the water in a glass. Some people will see that glass as half full.
Yeah, and
If
some
you
half
ask two
empty.
people, what do you see? Someone say, oh, that glass is half empty. Someone's going to say, oh, it's half full. That's the same glass of water, but different perspective. And this is what happens when you employ other people. How do I come across? And this is a basis of a 7-step series that I'm
But that's
actually writing.
exactly what I was telling you because so when I was saying that I started consuming all this dating like relationship content, and I started really to reflect like, do I do that? Do I think that way? Because a lot of people never put the blame on themselves. They always want to blame someone else. They never want to take like any responsibility for what's gone wrong. And I think further, especially as I'm getting older, I'm more willing to take responsibility
Oh,
than I am
happy
to
birthday,
blame.
by the way.
Thanks.
I'm just looking at your...
Yeah.
I don't know whether we're allowed to mention your age.
I don't mind.
Okay. 25.
Yeah, I just turned 25.
Quarter of a century.
I'm having a quarter life crisis. But no, so I am more willing now as I'm getting older to see where I've gone wrong first before I start blaming external, because the reason why I do that is because what I've done wrong is what's more in my control. And so if I can change something that's in my control, that's what is easier and quicker to do than anything
right.
else.
That's right.
So that's why, but I do think that, yeah, a lot of people don't take responsibility. They don't like to take
They don't
responsibility,
self-respect. It's like this, again, very controversial, this Me Too kind of movement. As much as I believe in some aspects of it, I think women also have to reflect that, is there anything that I can take responsibility for or do differently so that I don't find myself in that situation where I'm being exploited? And again, I can hear some people already saying that, how could you say that?
I know where you're going. So where
that?
you're going with it is so some people will say what you did there is like victim blaming, right? But so this is a conversation I have with like a lot of my female friends, and like really trying to get them to like understand that so for example, we don't live in a perfect world. The world isn't safe. That unfortunately, I wish I could live in a world where I can walk to the gym at 2 a.m. and not worry about anything and not have to keep my earplugs out, and if I hear any sound, I'm sprinting away and all that stuff, because that's what I do. But when you realize that, then you have to take precautions. So, for example, I am a 6'2", quite bulky and big guy, and I will not roam the streets of London at 2 a.m. just by myself, because so many bad things can happen to me at that time if I'm by myself. So if I don't do it, why would anyone that's smaller than me and not as strong as me feel like they can do it? And so this is what I try to tell some of my female friends, because they're thinking, not all of them, of course not, but the people that I try to get through to, their thinking is that, well, why should I change aspects of my life just because men can't behave? But it's also, you have to be safe for yourself, because at the end of the day, if something happens to you, you're the one that's going to have to deal with that, no one else. So you do have to take those precautions. We don't live in, this is not Disneyland.
No.
You can't, like, live your life like everyone is nice and everyone has the best intentions. You know what I mean?
And even when we talk about being nice to people, that's not to say that you shouldn't be safe in being nice to people. You know, we were talking earlier on about like you said, in the night you're going to the station, you're focused, and then you hear some footsteps behind you of someone. What do you do? Do you cross over the road and like pace it even, or do you try and sort of engage with the person to find out, are you going to the station as well? And you know, how do you handle that? Because maybe you're feeling a bit fearful. You might be feeling like, oh, they might be thinking I'm a pervert. I'm 6'2". I'm like walking behind them.
Yeah, Jenny. So what? Something I do, because I can see, once again. This is me being reflective. I can always like think in someone else's shoes. So if it's at night and I'm behind a woman and I'm walking behind her, I can see from her perspective. All she's probably thinking is it's dark.
Yeah,
I'm alone in this street. There's this big black man behind me. So to make her more comfortable, I will cross the road.
Yeah.
And go make sure there's a distance so she doesn't feel like I'm like following her behind her, because I'm not. I'm just trying to get to where I'm going to.
Yeah.
But she's not thinking. She doesn't know me. She can't read my mind, so she won't know that. So to make her feel comfortable, I will do that. But that being said, you know, you still have to. There's precautions that you can take to be safe. Obviously, I'm trying to make other people feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we as women also have to make ourselves feel safe.
Yeah.
And we also have to take responsibility for that relationship that we say we want. Or if you've been in a bad relationship, you have to get to a point where you said, okay, this has happened to me. It doesn't happen to everyone.
Yeah.
It's not everybody's fault. Which parts can I take responsibility for? I was totally dejected. I think I've mentioned that before. And I thought, how can I not be successful at this? I had a plan, you know. But it involves other people. And like you said, you can only take responsibility for yourself. Yeah. And if you find that you have been a victim of something, then you need to find a way, with the support of others and some professionals if necessary, to get yourself out of that victim situation. And sometimes
it is hard, though. I must
hard.
say. Well, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's definitely difficult.
It's
trauma
hard because
to overcome trauma.
It's trauma.
Yeah.
It's trauma, and I was traumatized to the point where I actually saw people like just doing normal things. You know, I come from a school of thought that normal is not great. You have to be doing something exciting. But I was beginning to envy normal because I couldn't do normal things. I was depressed. But I didn't see that was what it was. I just felt like I had no energy to do normal things. So I had to take that time out. Fortunately, I could afford to go and be in South Africa because I had the accommodation. So I just had to gather the money to go, because at this point I didn't have anywhere to live anyway. So, but it was very therapeutic. I was doing all the favorite things I was doing, like I love to do, which is to juice. I was able to run. They drive on the same side of the road as we do in the UK. I chose not to go to Nigeria because I had family there and they were going to be concerned for me in a way that was not going to help me. Yeah. But in that 6 months, what I was able to accomplish was I was able to clear my mind, detox myself, both physically with the juicing and everything.
Right, and mentally.
And mentally, because I did things that was just for me. What was it, what was I lacking? What happened? Blah, blah. And by the time I came back to the UK, obviously in between initially because I had my son to see during his holidays because he was staying with his father, I was more empowered. And I had friends while I was in South Africa who were able to help me to kind of like just see things from different perspectives. Like you were saying, I said, how do I come across? They said, at the moment, you just need to rest. You just, emotionally, you're a wreck.
Right.
So you need to recognize that, because the past doesn't have to affect your future.
Yep.
Because the way you position yourself is what will make you more or less attractive. And one of the things that I say to people is that you need to check in with people who are close to you. How am I coming across? How am I coming across? Am I coming across hostile towards people? Because that could still be a residue of the past. And people will tell you, they'll say,
Yeah, you have to be self-reflective because, okay, I can give you an example of something I've reflected heavily on. So, because I lived in Nigeria and I when I first went to Nigeria, I was in like Ondo, like with my grandma. And so I was living in a place where there might not be electricity for a month because the transformer blew.
Oh wow.
And for 2 months there's no electricity. There's no hot shower. Everything is
Oh,
cold.
wow.
Everything's cold
I
shower
feel you.
every
I
day.
feel you.
No water heater or anything like that. So, and even then, the position I'm in, where I lived, was so privileged compared to like the average person in the village, right? And I saw some serious poverty. I saw people really struggling to the point where when I came back to England, I was so like I had no compassion because I just had this mentality of what the hell are you guys complaining about? And I just couldn't see anyone's issue. I was like, it's not an issue. It's not an issue. It's not an issue. And I was very just non-compassionate.
Yeah,
I
because
think,
you've
and
seen the extreme side.
yeah, and I
of
think
things.
as time has gone on, I can still realize that like people in the West complain about very trivial things, but I can also understand that
Put it in perspective.
yeah, in
because
perspective,
it's relative
they don't
to
know
where
it's
they
relative.
live.
So
To where they live.
so all they know is like big cities and having electricity all the time and having water. So they have basic amenities most of the time. So to them, what is an issue is something that in my village people will be like,
That's
but
a
you have
non-issue.
electricity and water
That's
and
a-
food
that's a
though.
non-issue.
Yeah, it's not really an issue. So I can see now relative, and now I think I have more compassion because I'm okay, cool. Relative to your experience, I can understand why that's a big issue for you, even though I still think, it's not really an issue. But I can be more compassionate to it. And that took self-reflection because, and like speaking to people and just people saying, you're so heartless. And I was like, how am I heartless? It just isn't an
Yeah,
issue.
that's how you're coming across.
Yeah, but that's how I'm
Because-
coming across to other
exactly,
people, right?
and you're coming across that way because you're basing it on your perspective of a different place that you
Yeah.
used to live, and this is exactly it's actually a very good example of what we're talking about because how you're coming across when somebody else will feed it back to you, it will cause you to reflect that actually I didn't realize that every time I'm talking to the opposite sex, I'm always shouting or or like giving them that, you know how we can,
Yeah.
you know, like looking them up and down with your
Yeah.
eyes, you know, or before you say anything, we like, especially us that know how to, you know, you don't even know you're doing it. And so sometimes I actually do that now when I'm talking. I kind of look at myself in the mirror and say, am I coming across gentle or
Yeah.
am I coming across harsh? Because I remember when I first then started to date, it was on an online situation, which was again totally out of my
Comfort
culture,
zone.
comfort zone, culture zone. You know, we're talking about our culture. Dating websites. How old are you? How old are you?
Yeah.
So it was out of my culture zone and it was out of my comfort zone. But do you know what? The person who led me to do it was one of my my staff at work. And she was getting married the second time. And I said, girl, where did you find the husband from? Because she had grown up children. She said, online. I said, online? Are you for real?
Like, no way.
I said, no, there's not going to be any black men online. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And she said, listen, me and you are here tonight doing the night shift because we run a community organization. I said, okay, let's. And I said, wow, I'm not taking any pictures.
Yeah.
But the thing is, where am I going with this? You have to try something different. You know, and that goes with even the traumatic situation you've been through. It goes with maybe in the past you've been rejected
Yeah.
by, you know, like a man. Maybe you've gone to a woman to say, oh, I like you. And they just say, look at yourself up and down. And you know, some of us are like that.
Yeah.
We won't even be friendly, you know, even though we've said you should treat people with respect. They will judge everyone according to what they're looking for, forgetting that human beings might be approaching you actually for different things, for friendship. But because they've got their mindset, I'm looking for a soulmate. So if anybody, you know, approaches me that is not my physical spec, never mind, they might have other things to offer.
Yeah.
They might actually lead you to the person that might be, you know, ending up being someone that you can relate to. You've just written them off. So what happens to things thinking about how that other person might feel. They've just, worked up this courage to come and talk to you, and you've just written them off because they remind you of your ex. They speak in a kind of
an accent that
you don't like.
you don't like, or you don't think is posh enough, or whatever.
Exactly.
Sophisticated
Or
enough.
exactly. Or they have a goatee, and you prefer clean-shaven men. Although I think goatee is quite trendy at the moment. Yeah. Or they're 6'2", like you are, and they just remind you of bad things happening in the past with a big, tall, hunky man.
Yeah.
Or actually, you're quite attractive, and I'm ready to talk to you. But then after getting to know you, maybe, they're not the soulmate. But it's just doing something different. So I went on the website, not really believing that anything could come of it, really. I was just saying, why not?
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I'm not saying that website is for everyone, because people are worried about, is it catfishing?
Yeah, catfishing.
That people go online.
And there's also like danger of, because you have to be sensible. Once again, some people aren't sensible when they date. Like if someone is giving you some random address to come to, you don't just turn up to some address. You don't know this person. Like this is quite like deep, but I know someone who she matched a guy on like Tinder, I think it was, and then she invited him to to her house, and he like tied her up and like robbed her on knife point, and she's still struggling mentally from that. She doesn't trust men. She can't really date. She has trust issues. She has a lot of trauma from it. She goes to a therapist because of that.
Yeah.
So like also, one thing about online dating is you have to be very careful.
Well, you have to put the safety measures in place.
Yeah.
Number one, the dating site itself has some guidelines. And this is what I'm talking like 6 years ago when I was dating online. You have to follow the safety guidelines. You have to let some people know what you're doing. I personally remember giving my password and everything to about 3 or 4 of my close friends to go and have a look and check. Maybe there's something I've missed, that they might be able to see, because, you're looking at it. I'm quite a newbie to it. I remember doing that. I actually remember also every time I wanted to talk to anyone, I always used to make sure that a key couple of my close friends were aware I was talking. Right. And I never, ever spoke to anyone outside of the guidelines of that, because, there were some men that were saying, oh, give me your mobile number, personal number. I'm like,
nope.
The system gives us a means of communicating. Yeah. What's the rush, So you have to follow guidelines, and you have to also let other people know what you're doing. What are you inviting them to your house for? I mean, come on. You don't know them from a bar of soap.
Yeah, certain things are red flags. So like, I do like to see people's social media, because you can tell a lot from someone's social media. And there's certain things that are red flag. Like if it's just like no picture, it's like, well, you could have just made it. So it's like some people genuinely have no picture, but it's just a metric that's like a bit dodgy. Or someone's like, I'm not on social media at all. A bit dodgy. Some people are genuinely not on social media, but a bit dodgy. As someone just judging, trying to be safe, it's a bit dodgy. So there are certain things that you can...
Yeah, I mean, I remember my husband only had one picture.
Yeah.
And guess where he was on the picture? Next to a cash point machine. And I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
But I said, well, I could have just written him off.
Yeah, you can't write it, but it's a thing to think about.
Yeah.
You have
so I said, what was he taking a picture by a cash machine for? So later on, when we did get to talk about it, he said, oh, it's a taboo in it that women like money. So him being a cash machine made him look like a man of means. That was quite funny, actually. But yeah, it being doing something differently, because you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's equals to what is called
100%. And I think it works on both sides too. So I always tell guys, the worst thing you can do in this life is lead with money. Because a lot of guys that have money understand that it's easy to get the type of woman that say, I want a man that makes 6 figures. It's very easy to get those kind of women, but they're not trying to date you because of you. They're trying to date you because of your money. So yes, it's easy, but if you're looking for someone that actually cares about you, that's not the way to go. I don't
No.
think leading with money ends
No.
well
No.
and ever.
No.
Especially if you're looking for like an actual partner. If you're looking for, I don't know, a one night stand maybe. Um, and so yeah, like leading with money is just big no, and that's like one precaution that, let's say, people should take, men or women,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
women can lead with money too.
Of course, I
And
mean,
then a man who just wants to use a woman for her money can just come and like pretend that he likes her until he's gotten what he's gotten, and then leave. That happens a lot. So you shouldn't dangle, the golden fruit.
yeah, but also people, because they have money, that becomes a barrier to meeting people because they think, especially women, they think, well, I'm of a certain age, I have financial means. Some of them have got their own house, we've got our own cars, we've got everything, we're comfortable financially. And they're afraid that a man that if they date,
It's gonna come and take it all.
if they date a man that isn't equally at
Yoked.
that level, that he's just gonna come and be like a kept man, or he's just gonna
Which
come
does
and rob
happen
them.
sometimes, so it's a genuine
Yeah,
concern.
it's a genuine
yeah.
concern, but there are precautions that you can take to
make
make
sure.
sure that's not the, you don't just say, oh, okay, because you don't make as much money as I do, or vice versa, then we're not equally matched, because that's like talking materially. Because what you're looking for is a soulmate, someone that's going to be your companion, a friend, and you can leverage what you both have.
Yep, definitely.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
going with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, some women still think when you go on a date. I think we may have spoken about this before. Should it always be the man that pays for the meal? Could it be half or could it be the woman? Some women would write off a man completely if he's not paying for that first date.
Yep. A lot of people. Do you know what's funny? So what's funny about dating is that there's too many mixed signals, and people do it all the time. So I have friends in school who they basically, I can't remember what we were talking about, but the conversation of this like paying on a first date came up, and they are people that believe in, well, supposedly they'll tell you that they believe in like 50-50 and they don't need a man for anything and yada yada. And I could tell from the kind of things they say, even though that they claim that they think it's that way, I was like, yeah, you guys would want a guy to pay on the first date. I just can tell from the type of things that you talk about and your lifestyle. And they were like, they call me to the side, they're like, Ayo, we think like that, but you're not supposed to say it. And I was like, see, this is where you guys play games, because you're outwardly saying, oh, I believe in 50-50, but in reality, you just want a guy to pay.
Yeah.
So like, why, if that is what you expect, why not just say that? Why are you trying to play games and then on one hand
Well,
convince
this
yourself?
is where being transparent and honest comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things that I've self-disclosed about my journey, some people don't even agree. They say, oh, well, you shouldn't put all your dirty linen in public. Well, I'm saying this to help some other people, to be real. Because if you really want a soulmate, you've got to be honest from the get-go, because what you tolerate, people try and put their best foot forward anyway, don't they?
Yep.
So things can only get, let's just say, worse. Not better. Because you're going to let your guard down at some point. You can't pretend for 6 months.
Yeah.
You can pretend for like 3. So why not just start by not pretending? Okay? If you've got an issue with, because people of my age group do believe the man should pay for the meal.
Yeah.
Okay? Wherever you go. So if that's your belief, just say, obviously I would always say to women who think like that, have your money. Because if, for whatever reason, on the night, it doesn't go as planned, he can't pay for the meal, you've got some money, either your card or whatever, because someone's going to be washing the dishes. That's what we were talking about. Be sensible and have precaution. Maybe to you it's a test that he's paying for the meal. But trust me, when you guys get married...
do you know it does work in reverse, though? Because so I go into date expecting that I'm probably going to be expected to pay for the first time. But where my test is coming in, because if I'm gonna like be in a long term relationship with someone, you have to be in a relationship with someone that you can build together.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna build together with someone that just wants to waste all your money or just like blow through your money without any thought of like long term how you're going to build wealth. So what I'm seeing is the type of places. Remember, we're like just dating, first, second, third date. The type of places you're asking to go. I'm already calculating. Okay, cool. This is what this person thinks. What you order, are you considerate? So, for example, if I know someone else is paying, that's more of a reason for me to get something that costs less because someone else is paying. It's like etiquette.
Yes.
You don't, when someone says they're paying, oh, let me order the most expensive thing on the menu. That's really maybe not rude, but it's not good etiquette. So I'm also calculating, okay, is she just out here ordering the most expensive thing on the menu just because I'm paying? She knows I'm paying. So that's an unreasonable person off the get-go. You know that. So that's not going to work.
So I like that thinking.
Yeah.
Because it also, you're using that date as an opportunity to gather information
Right.
about whether or not this can be potentially a soulmate for you.
Yeah.
And this is what we should do. We should think, that person is thinking, am I potentially a soulmate for them? And this is why it's important to have your set of values before you even go on a date, to make sure that, okay, I'm checking this person out against my values. You know, are they somebody that's reasonable, you know, that's thoughtful in the area of, like you said, if we're going to be ending up sharing, because we've decided that 2 is better than 1 when we end up together, is this someone that will just keep their things to themselves? I'll keep mine. And everybody will just be selfish with their resources.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put everything you've got together in the same pot. But whatever one person's doing will affect the resources of the other person.
Definitely.
So if you as the maybe, you like spending, then I hope the other person likes, it's a balance to that. Because if you both like just spending, then you're both going to be broke very quickly. Lots of expensive dinners, eating out.
Yeah.
And dating isn't just all about going to restaurants. It's about spending quality time doing other things. I like, for example, some of my hobbies that, me, I like to go to different places, go holiday, go do running and so on. So for me, it was important when I was dating to have a partner that was willing to do some of my interests.
Yeah. Yeah.
And vice versa. Do you see what I'm saying? So if some of your interest isn't going to cost a lot of money, then I'll be like, okay, so let me balance it. Even though some of my interests are quite expensive, let me balance it by sometimes going on his interests that don't cost money and maybe pay for it because, it's not so expensive. But you would like that, wouldn't you, as a guy?
Yeah.
If a girl said, all right, I'll pay for the next
I realize
day.
it though. I do realize. So, like, for example, I was recently dating someone, and obviously I was paying for all the dates, whatever. And then I can't remember what happened, but we were going for a date, and it was like cheap. And she was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll pay. I've got it." And in my head, I was thinking, "Oh, that's cute," but also in my head, I was just laughing because I'm like, "Okay, so it's the cheapest thing that we're doing that now all of a sudden you want to pay." But it's cool. It's cool.
Exactly, because maybe that's what they can afford.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, if you're going out on a date, they need to be some sort of discussion about how we're going to settle things, because someone's going to end up being upset when you're choosing. I remember when I was going on my first date, I actually spoke to my friend. I said, listen, what's a reasonable place to ask to go on a first date that will give us a chance to talk?
Are you not open it? Because I'm very, very... I'm so like... Because I'm not going to let anyone push me into bankruptcy. So like, first date, I don't really mind. When it starts getting... Because sometimes like I'll date women and they'll start demanding things and you're just thinking, mate, I don't know you. We've been on one date. Like, oh, when are we going to the next day? I want to go to this place. Like, okay. So... Sometimes I might just tell them I can't afford it, even if I can, just to see, okay, how do they react? What do they say? Oh, you can't afford it. Oh, he's broke. Goodbye. I just want to see what they're going to say, how they're going to react to it. So I throw... And it's funny because I think sometimes and this happens, which is why I think it's really good I'm saying these things, because
Yeah.
sometimes guys will stop talking to women, and women, like, I don't believe in ghosting personally. I wouldn't ghost anyone, but some guys like ghost women, and they'll be like wondering why did I get ghosted. It's things like this, because someone like me, every day I'm calculating what type of person you are, because I'm trying to. I don't date for fun. I'm dating to potentially get in a relationship, and so if I'm dating to potentially get in a relationship, it's considered.
Yeah.
I have to actually think, can we work long term?
Yeah, and
And
that's a
so,
very good point you've made here.
Yeah.
Because every date should have a purpose.
Yeah.
So when I say to people, you have to go on dates, they'd be like, but I want to get married. Why should I be going on dates? And I'm like, because that's how you're going to know the person that you can marry. Because they think, oh, well, that should just be revealed to me, right? And I'm like, you still need to go on a date.
Yeah.
To be able to know whether or not you're compatible, because sometimes you don't even know what you can put up with until you've seen them messing the waiter or waitress for not bringing the food hot enough.
Yeah. But it's also, so I calculate, especially financial things, because
Yeah.
financial, it's like one of the reasons why a lot of marriages and like long-term relationships break up is finances. So, for example, these are things that, so I've told you all the stuff that I'm like calculating on the date, like she ordering the most expensive thing. So I'm paying, and you, from the woman's perspective, she just might think, oh, he pays for everything, I can use him. Not realizing that the whole time I'm just calculating what type of person you are. So by date 4, I'm already like, okay, yeah, this is not going to work. And then you'll now be wondering, why did he just all of a sudden, I thought it was going well. But you're not, because you're not reflecting on how you're behaving.
Yeah, how you're coming across. What
Yeah,
are you offering
exactly.
the relationship? And this is a very good point you've made, because another thing that I say to people is that, what is it are you offering in the relationship? Because we saw some of that in one of the reactions we did before.
Yeah.
That, you know, you're thinking, well, I'm beautiful, you know. You should be happy to be seen with me.
Yeah.
I've got it all going on. But excuse me, if the man is a man of means, or
There's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people that he can be with. What is your unique selling offer?
There's a lot of human
Where's your
beings on this world.
USB? What is it about you? And so this needs to be done beforehand. Once you've gotten over your barriers to dating, just say to yourself, what can I offer in this relationship that person does that? You need to do a bit of homework. Obviously, if it's an online situation, people have some sort of profile. Once you've satisfied yourself that it's not a catfish, you know, it's a real profile, then to begin to look for in between the line. What can I offer this? Rather than, okay, he's got this. He's got that. What can I offer? What is it that's unique about me that I can offer in this relationship? And vice versa. What have you got, Ayo, that you can offer a woman? So what have you got that you can offer a woman?
Oh, you're asking me on the spot. Well, I consider myself very financially literate.
Okay, which is very important.
Which is extremely important, actually. It's the reason why I live with my parents and I'm saving for a house, knowing fully well that girls shame men for staying with their parents, and knowing fully well that I definitely have more money than most people that rent houses and drive Mercedes.
Right, some people are going to be DMing me right now for what you just said and say.
No, but, why I have to say it is because the first assumption is that when you live with your parents, you're broke. But actually, after reading a lot of financial books, I've learned that, like, instant gratification, you shouldn't do that when it comes to finances. You have to, like, there's certain things you have to take care of at certain times. And if you can live at home, like, which is the situation I'm in, then I'm in a position where I can save to buy a house. And then
so
also,
I hope you're listening to this.
Yeah, and also, like, okay,
this is really
things
important.
that there's stuff like life setup. Remember the first man guy was talking about life setup is like having a nice house, a shiny car, all this sort of stuff that it looks good, but you don't actually know what that person's financial situation is if they're just scraping to pay that off. And stuff like cars are depreciating assets. So what I've learned in financial books is that you don't buy depreciating assets unless you have an asset that's profitable that can pay for that depreciating asset. Okay. So if you just have a bank of money, someone gives you 30k, to spend it on a depreciating asset is actually quite stupid. So I wouldn't do stuff like that. I'm the type of person that would drive a Ford so I can buy a house, and invest in businesses that actually make a profit. Then when they do make a profit, then now that's the time. There's a time and place. Now that's the time to then buy the Mercedes, then buy the. So the thing is that I do all of this knowing fully well how it looks, and which is why I deliberately double down and will, like, you know, if I'm driving a Ford, drive a Ford in front of someone to see how do they react, what are they, because I want to know people that are.
And this
Yeah.
is very important that you're learning this now at your
Yeah.
age. When I was your age, we weren't even thinking like that. I mean, I was married by your age, by the way.
Yeah.
I got married actually at your age. And at the time, the world, you know, we didn't have access to internet and so on. So our learning was not as comprehensive. But I think the way that you're thinking is actually very, very key to relationships. So that anyone that's looking for someone like yourself in relationship, you should look for what they have that might help you in your long-term relationship rather than what they've got now. So that instant gratification is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There are lots of 25-year-olds that are driving flashy cars. They're earning good money in the city perhaps, and they're just looking good, and the women are all after them.
I know, but
and it's not sustainable.
Exactly. So financially, someone who makes $50,000 a year, but can save 20,000 a year is always going to be better off financially than someone that makes 100K a year but spends all of it.
Exactly.
At the end of the year, someone has more money than the other, and it's the person that makes less.
Exactly.
And then long term, with that 20,000, you can invest it in something that brings a higher return eventually over the course of 5 to 10 years. You actually end up making more money than the person that started off earning 50,000 a year more than you.
Yes.
And people don't understand it because, once again, instant gratification.
Well,
people just want everything now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, to add to buttress your point, it actually feels to me like you are doing the things that most people your age aren't doing. So
Definitely.
You're already out of your comfort zone.
Definitely, I can
because
definitely
you're
say that,
ridiculed
yeah.
already. Like you said, someone would say, "You're living at home with your parents."
I know, but the thing is, I don't
It's
care.
not that-
But the only reason, the only reason I don't care is because I know what I'm doing it for, and also I have solace in the fact that I know how much money is in my bank account.
Exactly.
So I know that, like, if someone calls me broke, okay, cool, but I know I'm not, because I have, like, I'm working towards buying a house.
And that's the other point, that just because someone might see you in a particular way, if they're not in your close network, it doesn't really matter what they think. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying, that you need people who are close to you, not the ones that are hating on you or the ones that wish they could be like you. You need people who are close to you. And if you don't have, because I know some people say, "Oh, I'm done with friendships, you know, they never work out for me, whatever, and this and that." If you're in my sort of the older person, that you've got children, your children will tell you. Now, they won't always tell you what you want to hear, but they, you know, your children, I mean, they're living in a different, and I often ask my son, actually, you know, what do you think of this? You know, I'll like present him with some of even what I'm doing now. He watches all the videos and say, "Actually, Mum, this came across well." And for me, we have to have that intergenerational conversation.
Yeah.
So if you're an older person that's looking like a mature single, like I like to say, a mature age single, you've never been married, you've got your career, you've got all that, but there's a barrier.
Yeah.
Because you might not have had any traumatic experiences like I have as once divorced. There's still a barrier, because if you desire to be married and you are not yet married, there is a barrier. If you have children, ask your children. You might not. Now, the roles are reversed, right? Because as parents, we were the one always telling the kids what to do. But trust me, they have something to say now.
Yeah.
Ask your kids. Your kids will probably tell you, "Get a life, Mum," or "Get a life, Dad."
And they have your best interest at heart.
They do.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to go wrong. And by the time they're older, like yourself, 25, they have their own journey. So they're not going to say, "Oh, Mum, I don't want you to ever see anyone or be with anyone," or "Dad," because they want to leave. You know, you're planning to leave home.
Yeah.
You have your mum and dad, so that's great. But there's some younger people who only have their mum or their dad, mostly just their mum. So maybe their mum, they're in a single parent situation, like I was for a season. And I actually remember that very first date that was a physical date that I had with my husband.
Yeah.
I took my son on that date, and we had already prepped him, and my husband took his son. So because he had a son as well, all four of us had the date, our first physical date.
Oh, wow.
No, sorry, it wasn't the first. The second one.
Yeah.
The first one was just the two of us, and once we decided that we wanted a second date, we agreed that okay, these are the significant others in our lives that we were still taking care of, and then we had a four-person date, and I remember it like yesterday. We went to somewhere. We had it in a restaurant that we were all gonna be comfortable to find something to eat. Guess which restaurant it was? Have a guess. Where they sell chicken.
Chicken? What, KFC? Or
No.
I was like, oh my.
That's somewhere you could sit down.
What, Nando's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important to consider bringing significant others that care about you in that, because it helps you to be reflective.
Yeah.
And I can't emphasize that enough, because we are not reflective enough. We're not emotionally intelligent enough to see our blind spots.
Yeah. I agree. And on that note, I think it would be good to sort of end. But I
Yeah.
definitely think, yeah, we covered a lot there. Especially in terms of, most importantly, like overcoming past relationship trauma,
Yeah.
which is really important. So, yeah, definitely comment down below your
Yes.
thoughts.
We liked your thoughts.
We like listening to your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
Like the video. You have to stay here because we have the real talk on relationships.
Yes.
And stay tuned for more videos in the future.
Yes. And check me out on TikTok, Matters of the Heart. Started that one. Just 15 seconds nuggets.